So what if spending 2 hours in the gym every single day is actually shortening your life?
Yeah, I mean, that's a terrifying thought for a lot of people.
Right, like if you've ever stood in the middle of a weight room and you're just completely paralyzed trying to figure out if you should run or lift or do both.
And you're terrified that doing them in the wrong order is somehow ruining all your progress.
Exactly. You are absolutely not alone in that. So today we're looking at why doing less, but sequencing it perfectly might actually be the ultimate scientific blueprint for longevity.
It is remarkably easy to get caught up in the anxiety of it all. Because, I mean, the human body is vastly complex,
Yeah.
and modern fitness culture is just so incredibly loud right now.
Oh, it's deafening.
It turns something totally natural into what feels like a high-stakes test that you're just constantly failing. But when you strip away the noise and actually look at the underlying physiology, the rules for optimizing human performance are, well, they're surprisingly elegant.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are synthesizing a massive stack of sources today. We've got raw clinical data, a really comprehensive 30-year Harvard longevity study, a massive systematic review straight from Frontiers in Physiology, and sports science literature on overtraining.
That's a lot of data.
It's a ton, but our mission is to cut through all that gym bro mythology and figure out what is actually happening under the hood. So to start, we have to talk about cardio versus weights.
Right?
Because putting them in opposite corners of the ring is basically a false dichotomy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just the wrong way to look at the human body entirely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, cardio and resistance training are solving two completely different physiological problems.
Okay.
And they remodel your body in entirely different ways. Like, the best place to see this is actually the heart itself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so cardio imposes what we call a volume load on the myocardium, which is your heart muscle.
Yeah.
Because you're pumping large amounts of blood for this long, extended period, the body adapts by driving eccentric cardiac hypertrophy.
Wait, let me make sure I'm getting this. Because hypertrophy just means growth, right? But what does eccentric mean in the context of the heart?
Ah, right. So it means the chamber of the heart actually expands.
Like it stretches out.
Exactly. The internal capacity gets larger, which increases the physical volume of blood you can pump out with every single beat.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, contrast that with resistance training. Lifting weights doesn't present a volume load, it presents a pressure load.
The pressure load.
Right. When you grip a heavy weight and contract your muscles maximally, you are transiently cutting off local blood flow.
Just from squeezing the muscle so hard.
Yes. And this causes a massive spike in intramuscular pressure and something called systemic afterload, which is basically just the resistance your heart has to pump against to get blood out to the rest of the body.
That sounds intense for the heart.
It is. And to survive that repeated stress, the heart undergoes concentric hypertrophy, meaning the actual walls of the heart muscle get physically thicker and stronger to handle that intense pressure.
Oh, I see. So cardio builds a bigger tank and lifting builds a stronger engine.
That is a perfect way to put it, yeah.
That makes so much sense. And it's not just the heart changing either, right? The blood vessels themselves are fundamentally adapting. I was looking through the clinical data you flagged for this, and the effects of resistance training on blood pressure are just staggering.
They really are. The data shows that in hypertensive cohorts, a structured resistance training program delivers literally pharmaceutical-level blood pressure reductions.
Like taking a pill.
Basically, we're looking at a drop of roughly 6 millimeters of mercury in systolic blood pressure. That is entirely on par with taking a prescription medication just for moving heavy things.
That is wild.
And the glycemic control, like how your body handles blood sugar, is arguably even more impressive.
I want to dig into that actually, because usually people just associate blood sugar management with, diet or going for a jog. How is picking up a dumbbell clearing blood sugar?
Well, it comes down to the cellular mechanics. When you perform resistance training, the intense mechanical tension of a muscle contracting activates these specific cellular gateways called GLUT4 transporters.
GLUT4, okay.
Yeah, they basically sit inside the muscle cell, and the physical contraction causes them to migrate up to the surface of the cell and literally pull sugar out of your bloodstream to fuel the work.
Just mechanically pulling it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's revolutionary here is that they do this completely independent of insulin.
Wait, really? No insulin required?
None. You are clearing blood sugar simply by creating mechanical tension, bypassing the entire insulin signaling pathway that is so often broken in metabolic syndrome.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me, though, because we have to talk about calorie burn.
The classic treadmill metric.
Yes, people jump on a treadmill, they watch that digital calorie counter tick up to like 400, and they think cardio is the ultimate fat loss tool. But lifting weights feels like you're barely burning anything in the moment.
And that's the illusion of acute data. If you look at the immediate expenditure, sure, steady-state cardio burns more right in the moment.
Right.
Depending on intensity, you might burn 145 to 370 kilocalories per 30 minutes on a run, whereas lifting might only burn like 110 to 220 in that same window.
So cardio wins the half hour.
It does, but stopping the measurement when you leave the gym misses the entire metabolic picture.
It makes me think of a financial analogy, actually. Like doing endless cardio is kind of like having a really high-paying day job.
Okay, well, I like this.
You get a lot of cash right now, in the moment, in the form of that acute calorie burn. But lifting weights is like investing your money in compound interest. You might not get a massive payout at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, but it fundamentally raises your baseline wealth.
That captures the mechanism perfectly, because resistance training actually changes the metabolic cost of just existing.
Which is the dream, honestly.
Right. The clinical data shows that lifting weights can elevate your basal metabolic rate, your BMR, by up to 9% over a 24-week period.
Wow, 9%.
Yeah. That means you are burning more calories while you're sitting on the couch or just sleeping. Plus, lifting triggers EPOC excess post-exercise oxygen consumption.
The afterburn effect.
Exactly. Because you've created so much structural microdamage and metabolic disruption, your body has to consume massive amounts of oxygen and energy to repair the system. And that keeps your resting metabolic rate elevated for up to 48 hours after you rack the weights.
So cardio is cash in hand, lifting is long-term dividends, which I guess transitions perfectly into the ultimate long-term dividend, which is actual longevity.
The Holy Grail.
Yeah. You brought in this massive Harvard cohort study, and the numbers are just almost hard to believe.
The scale of this study is really what makes it so robust. I mean, they tracked over 147,000 adults for up to 30 years.
That is a massive sample size.
It is. And they found that engaging in just 90 to 119 minutes of strength training a week.
Which is less than 2 hours total.
Right. Just that small amount yields a 13% lower all-cause mortality and a 19% lower cardiovascular mortality.
Okay, but the stat that stopped me in my tracks was the brain health.
Oh, the neuro data. Yeah.
A 27% lower neurological mortality, meaning a massive drop in the risk of dying from things like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. I just don't get how lifting a dumbbell protects my brain a decade from now.
It comes back to blood flow and neurochemistry. Resistance training improves systemic vascular health, meaning the microvessels in your brain get better at delivering oxygen and clearing out metabolic waste.
Kind of sweeping out the cobwebs.
Basically. Furthermore, intense muscle contractions release myokines, which are these proteins that travel from the muscle directly to the brain. And they stimulate the release of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
BDNF, I've heard of that.
Yeah, BDNF essentially acts like fertilizer for your brain. It promotes the growth of new neurons and synapses. You are literally building cognitive reserve by building muscle.
That is just wild. But the ultimate magic in the Harvard data is what happens when you combine the two modalities, right?
Yes. Doing both aerobic exercise and resistance training drops your risk of early death by a staggering 45% to 58%.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But here's the catch in the data that I really want you to explain. The survival benefits literally plateau after 120 minutes of lifting a week.
They do.
So for the gym rat who is spending 2 hours a day, 6 days a week in the weight room, are they actively wasting their time?
From a pure general longevity standpoint, yes, they absolutely are.
Oh,
The dose-response curve for living longer is basically J-shaped.
right.
Doing zero exercise is highly lethal. Doing 90 to 120 minutes of lifting is
The
optimal.
sweet spot.
Right. But pushing past 2 hours a week of lifting does not correlate with any additional survival advantages in the epidemiological data.
So more is not better.
Not for longevity. Now, obviously, if your goal is specific maximal strength or you're like a competitive bodybuilder, you need more volume to force those extreme adaptations.
Sure.
But for you, the listener, who simply wants to live a long, highly functional, disease-free life, the minimum effective dose is drastically lower than the fitness industry wants you to believe.
All right, so the data clearly shows we need both cardio and lifting to hit that 58% mortality risk reduction. But anyone who has spent like 5 minutes on a fitness forum knows there's a massive warning label attached to this.
Ah, yes.
Cardio will kill your gains. The dreaded interference effect. The idea that if you run, your muscles will literally shrink. How do we mix these two modalities without canceling out our hard work?
Well, the interference effect is probably one of those misunderstood concepts in sports science. For decades, scientists believed there was a direct molecular conflict in your cells.
Like they were fighting each other.
Exactly. Aerobic training signals a cellular pathway called AMPK, which is all about energy management and endurance.
Mm-hmm.
Resistance training signals a totally different pathway called mTOR, which is the master switch for muscle growth.
Right.
So the old theory was that turning on AMPK directly blocked mTOR. People thought if you did cardio, you literally switched off your body's ability to build muscle at the genetic level.
But looking at the recent human trials in our sources, that molecular battle seems to be totally overblown.
Entirely. Modern research has clarified that this molecular conflict is transient. It passes within just a few hours.
Oh.
The real interference effect, like the actual reason doing cardio can sometimes compromise your lifting, has almost nothing to do with cellular signaling and everything to do with localized muscle damage and systemic fatigue.
Okay, let's use a baking analogy to explain the mechanism here, because I think it helps. Combining these workouts is like baking a cake.
I love a good food analogy.
Right. So to build muscle, you need specific ingredients. In this case, localized cellular energy and stored glycogen in your muscles. If you do an intense, exhausting cardio session first, you are essentially using up all your wet and dry ingredients just to survive the run.
Exactly.
So when you finally go to the squat rack, you have no ingredients left to activate the high-threshold motor units required to lift heavy. The cake just collapses before it even goes in the oven.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. Your central nervous system is just too drained to recruit the fast-twitch muscle fibers you need for strength. And, the specific modality of the cardio matters immensely for how much of those ingredients you use up.
What do you mean by modality? Like the type of cardio?
Right. Running, for example, is brutal for interference because it involves high cumulative ground reaction forces.
Pounding the pavement.
Yes. Every time your foot strikes the ground, your leg muscles are undergoing high eccentric muscle damage, meaning the muscle fibers are forcibly lengthening while under tension just to absorb the impact of your body weight.
Ouch.
Right, and that micro-tearing creates localized inflammation that severely blunts your leg strength adaptations.
Whereas something like cycling is entirely different because you're just pushing the pedals down.
Correct. Cycling is concentric dominant. The muscle is shortening as it works without that violent impact absorption. Therefore, cycling causes virtually zero structural muscle damage compared to running, which means it causes almost zero interference with lower body hypertrophy or strength development.
That is such a good hack. Which brings us to the ultimate question of sequence. We have this systematic review and meta-analysis from Frontiers in Physiology that looks at exactly how to order our gym sessions.
It's a great paper.
It is. They compared doing strength before endurance, what they call the SE sequence, versus endurance before strength ES. And it turns out your cardiovascular system doesn't really care about the order at all.
No, it doesn't.
The sequence doesn't impact your VO2 max, your aerobic capacity at all.
Right. Your heart and lungs get the endurance benefits either way.
Mm-hmm.
But for your neuromuscular system, the sequence is absolutely critical.
Tell me why.
Doing strength before endurance significantly improves lower limb strength metrics, specifically things like knee extension and leg curl torque. And the data shows this SE advantage is particularly pronounced in older adults, in women, and in training programs that last longer than 8 weeks.
Because you're fresh.
Exactly. By doing the heavy, complex lifting first, when your nervous system is completely fresh, you secure the strength adaptation. Then you can use whatever energy is left to stress the cardiovascular system.
So the scientific best practice is pretty clear. Lift first, do cardio second, or I guess better yet, separate them by 6 to 24 hours to let your cellular energy actually recover.
Ideal, if you have the time.
But wait, let me push back on this a little because I want to make sure we aren't painting with too broad a brush here. Is this sequence rule absolute for literally everyone? What if you are listening to this and you're training specifically for a marathon? Shouldn't you put endurance first?
That is a really vital distinction. The sequence depends entirely on your primary physiological goal.
Okay.
If you are a competitive endurance athlete, you must perform your cardio when you are most fresh to maximize your running economy and your aerobic adaptations. You need the highest quality of movement for the run.
That makes sense.
But if you are generalist seeking that balanced longevity sweet spot, or if you're getting older and prioritizing muscle preservation to prevent frailty, You must lift first.
Okay, so for the sake of living to 100, we are prioritizing longevity, and we are scheduling our lifting before our cardio. Now, how do we optimize the lifting session itself?
This is where people get it so wrong.
Yeah, because looking at the literature on volume and hormones, it turns out the whole crush yourself every single day mentality might actually be the very thing stopping people from seeing results.
It is the most common trap in fitness by far. When we look at the hormonal responses and the mechanical thresholds that actually drive a muscle to grow, we see a very clear, nonlinear dose-response curve.
Meaning more is not better.
More is definitely not better. More is just more stress. The scientific sweet spot for maximum myofibrillar hypertrophy, the actual adding of new muscle tissue, is somewhere between 12 to 20 sets per muscle group per week.
Just 12 to 20 sets per week? And pushing way past that completely backfires. Like you brought up the clinical data on German volume training, and the results are wild.
They really challenge the conventional wisdom.
For those who don't know, German volume training is this famous, brutal protocol where you do 10 sets of 10 repetitions of an exercise.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It's awful, but the researchers compared that classic 10 by 10 protocol against a modified 5 set of 10 routine, and the people doing literally half the work, the 5 by 10 group, actually yielded significantly more lean mass in their trunk and their arms.
It's a perfect illustration of the adaptation threshold.
Mm.
Once you exceed the amount of stress your body can actually recover from, you aren't stimulating new growth anymore.
You're just digging a hole.
Precisely. You are just generating excessive muscle damage, creating massive systemic inflammation, and depleting your nervous system. The muscles spend all this energy just trying to repair the damage to get back to baseline, rather than building new tissue above baseline.
Let's talk about the hormones involved in that process, too. Because the human body is incredibly anticipatory, isn't it? Your nervous system actually knows what's coming. It spikes epinephrine and norepinephrine adrenaline before you even unrack the first weight.
Yes, the autonomic nervous system prepares to deploy energy before the physical demand even begins. And people get incredibly obsessive about how to manipulate these acute hormonal spikes during the workout.
Like using stopwatches for rest periods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Timing the rest periods down to the second. But the data tells a much simpler story. A comprehensive 6-month study looked at individuals taking short 2-minute rests between sets versus longer 5-minute rests.
You know what happened?
The result: there was absolutely no significant difference in strength gains, muscle mass, or long-term baseline hormonal profiles like testosterone and growth hormone.
So I don't need to panic if someone is talking to me at the water cooler.
Not at all. The acute spike during the workout simply doesn't dictate chronic adaptations.
Which honestly shatters the biggest myth of all, the failure fallacy. I have to actively challenge this whole leave it all on the gym floor culture that dominates social media right now.
Please do.
There was an 11-week study in our sources comparing a group that trained to absolute muscular failure, meaning they physically could not move the weight on the last rep, versus a group that intentionally left a rep or two in the tank.
The non-failure group.
Right. And during a 5-week peaking phase, the non-failure group actually had greater increases in strength, greater increases in power, higher resting testosterone, and much lower resting cortisol.
While the group that constantly pushed to absolute failure saw a decrease in IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor.
Which is super important.
Yeah, yes, it's a highly crucial hormone for muscle building.
Wait, let me make sure I'm hearing you correctly here.
Yep.
Are you telling me that screaming, grinding, and pushing yourself until you physically drop the weight actually suppresses your muscle-building hormones long-term?
Yes, that is exactly what the data shows.
Because that completely contradicts almost every fitness influencer out there pushing the no pain, no gain narrative.
I know it sounds incredibly counterintuitive, but you have to separate an acute stress response from a chronic biological adaptation.
Okay, unpack that for me.
The massive hormonal spikes you get right after a grueling, vomit-inducing workout are just a systemic survival response. Your body thinks it's in danger.
It's panicking.
Right. But if you constantly train to failure, session after session, you chronically elevate your resting cortisol levels. And cortisol is a stress hormone. When it stays elevated, you disrupt your body's normal diurnal cortisol rhythm.
And that's bad news.
Terrible news. You shift your entire endocrine system into a catabolic state, meaning your body essentially panics and starts breaking down its own muscle tissue for energy instead of building it up.
And when you constantly train to failure and elevate that resting cortisol, you're not just stalling your gym progress, you're actively destroying your nervous system, which is exactly how people end up in our final major topic, overtraining syndrome.
Yes.
I like to use a debt analogy to visualize what's happening here. Overtraining isn't just, being a little tired. It's like putting all of your physiological stress on a credit card.
That's a very precise way to map the timeline, actually, which is the ultimate diagnostic tool for overtraining.
Right. So functional overreaching is like charging a big purchase but paying it off in full at the end of the month. You push really hard for a week, you take a few days of rest, the debt clears, and you bounce back stronger.
That's healthy adaptation.
Exactly. Non-functional overreaching is when you carry that high balance for weeks. You're paying interest, your gym performance drops, and it takes weeks of rest to finally recover.
You're digging the hole deeper.
Yeah. But overtraining syndrome, OTS, that is, when the debt goes straight to collections, your central nervous system declares bankruptcy, and your body forcefully shuts you down. That can take months to fix.
Because OTS is fundamentally a systemic malfunction. It is not localized muscle fatigue. It involves a severe disruption of your autonomic nervous system.
What does that look like practically?
Well, your sympathetic nervous system basically gets stuck in overdrive. You'll see your resting heart rate spike by 10 or 15 beats per minute. Your sleep architecture is severely disrupted, like you're exhausted, but you just can't stay asleep.
Oh, that's the worst feeling.
It is. You experience massive mood shifts, sudden irritability, severe anxiety, and a total loss of motivation to train.
The sources specifically mentioned that disrupted diurnal cortisol rhythm you talked about earlier. Instead of cortisol naturally being high in the morning to wake you up and give you energy and low at night so you can sleep, it just becomes this flat, messy, low-level line all day long.
Exactly. The rhythm is broken.
So if you're waking up feeling heavy, irritable, and just dreading the gym, how do you know if you legitimately need a rest day to avoid OTS or if you're just being lazy and need discipline?
You have to look for the trend, not just an isolated bad day. If your sleep is poor, your strength is regressing, and your mood is flat for 10 days straight, that is a biological signal, not a lack of willpower.
That's a really helpful distinction.
And this is where we have to establish a strict do-not-do list. Because when performance drops, an athlete's first instinct is usually to punish themselves by training harder to break through the plateau.
The classic ego trap.
Right. Or, if they feel soft and inflamed from the high cortisol, they diet harder. Cutting calories while you are entering an overtrained state is a massive, catastrophic mistake. You are literally starving the very recovery mechanisms that are trying to heal your nervous system.
And a quick warning about smartwatches here, too. Wearables and gadgets are just data points. If your mood is terrible, your joints ache, and your sleep is fragmented over a couple of weeks, you have to trust physical reality over a magical green recovery score on a glowing screen.
Absolutely. Listen to your body first.
So what is the actual protocol when you realize your physiological debt has finally gone to collections?
You have to aggressively stop the bleeding. Depending on the severity of the symptoms, you need to cut your training volume by 60 to 80% or step away from the gym completely.
Just walk away.
Yes. You have to prioritize high-quality carbohydrates to replenish glycogen, bump up your protein, and aggressively protect your sleep. And when you do finally reintroduce load, you do it incredibly gradually,
Like how gradual?
adding maybe 10 to 20% volume per week. And you only do that when the heavy systemic morning fatigue is completely dissipated.
So if we synthesize this massive stack of data into a practical blueprint for you, the listener, to capture that astonishing 58% reduction in early mortality, you absolutely need to combine lifting and cardio.
And sequence matters immensely. Lift before you do your endurance work to protect the muscle.
Keep your weekly lifting volume in that sustainable 12 to 20 set sweet spot per muscle group.
Leave a rep or two in the tank instead of grinding to absolute failure.
And relentlessly monitor your biological recovery timeline so you don't cross the line into overtraining syndrome. Fitness shouldn't be about endless punishing exhaustion.
No, it really shouldn't.
The goal isn't to destroy your physiology every time you walk into a gym just to prove you work hard. The goal is to apply the absolute minimum effective dose of stress required to stimulate an adaptation, and then step back and let your body do the incredible, complex work of rebuilding while you just go live your life.
I really want to leave you with a final concept to mull over regarding that rebuilding process. We so often think of rest as simply the absence of training, like an empty space on the calendar.
Right.
But it's not. Rest is an active, highly vital variable in the training equation itself. If new muscle tissue, new mitochondria, and new neural pathways are actually built during recovery and not during the workout, then the person who masters the subtle art of doing absolutely nothing might just be the most advanced athlete of all.
I love that. Next time you feel paralyzed by all the conflicting loud workout advice out there, just remember that the actual science points to a much simpler, far more forgiving path. Until next time, happy training and enjoy doing absolutely nothing.